All right, so this is the final review guide for geometry. So question one, what's the scale factor? This is kind of weird, it says mml, but I guess we'll work with it. To m prime n prime l. So for the scale factor, again, we just want to divide to figure out what the scale factor is going to be. In this case, since I want to go from this triangle to that triangle, I know I'm getting smaller, so I'm going to say that it's going to be 9/12 or 3/4. I could pick any one of the divisions to do. I could do 6 divided by 8 to get to 3/4. But it's important to note that it is getting smaller. For question 2, we need to transform using a dilation of 0.5 to 0.3 comma 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply each of these by 0.5. So 3 times 0.5 is 1.5. 5 times 0.5 is 2.5. So my final point is going to be 1.5 comma 2.5. Find the value for E. So it looks like these two are a little bit out of whack. So let's go ahead and reorient triangle DEF. Just so it matches up. So we've got 8, 6, and 4, because we want the sides to kind of go in the same order. Smallest to biggest, smallest to biggest. So that's the correct order they want to be in. So what we're going to do is double check to see if we're going to end up with SSS similarity. Let me put in my 46 angles for DEF. Since I can't really tell anything about this angle and I can't really tell anything about that angle, I can't really find any SAS or AA similarities. So I got to try SSS. So we have SSS similarity if all of the sides have the same ratio. So in this case, that's 20/8 is equal to 15/6 is equal to 10/4. So we're checking that. We don't know if that's true or not. We have to actually find it out. But if we reduce them, yeah, we'll find out it is true. They all end up being 2.5. So by SSS similarity, we can start to put in some of our other angles. We know that angle S has to be the same as angle, not S, but angle D. So we can say that this has to now be 29. And since our triangle is equal to 180, we can actually figure out what angle E is going to be. So 180 degrees is equal to 29 plus 46 plus angle E. So 29 plus 46 is 60/75, which means that 105 has to equal angle E. So we get 105 degrees. Question 4, find the length of VW. So VW is right here. So we know that since we do have similar triangles, again by AA similarity, angle V is shared and these two right angles are shared. VW over VZ is going to be equal to 62.5 over 50. Because they're in the same spots. So we have one of our segment rules that lets us do this. Now we're trying to find out VW, which means somehow we have to get VZ. But if we look, VY is 80, ZY is 50, 80 minus 50 is 30. So it turns out VZ is actually 30. So I've got VW over 30 is equal to 62.5 over 50. We could cross multiply to solve. So let's do that. So 50 VW equals 62.5 times 30. Divide both sides by 50. So VW equals, all right, well, let's see if we can do this quickly. I don't think there's a good way to do this one quickly. We can definitely cancel out the zeros, but let's just go ahead and throw it into the calculator and see what we get. Let's get rid of these parabolas. 62.5 times 30 over 50. 37.5. So we'll keep that as our answer. That'll be set. And that kind of makes sense. We want this to be longer than VZ. it's a little bit longer than VZ. So I'm pretty happy with that as a reasonable choice. Next, find the value for x. So here we've got congruent angles, which means that 28 divided by 8 for the first triangle is going to be equal to x over 14 for the second triangle. Unsurprisingly, we're going to cross multiply again. So 28 times 14 equals 8 times x. Divide both sides by 8. And again, 8 really doesn't divide that well. Maybe it does, because we can do 28 divided by 4 is 7. 14 divided by 2 is 7 again. So we should get 49 for x. So I guess we don't really need the calculator on that one. We'll get 49 in this case. Because at 8 we can split that up and break it up. Next we want to find AB. This is definitely a right triangle, so we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. So we've got A, we've got B, we've got C. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So 12 squared plus 35 squared equals C squared. Which means the square root of 12 squared plus 35 squared equals C. And at that point, we're just going to throw it into the calculator. So the square root of 12 squared, where it was, plus 35 squared. We get 37. There we go. That's kind of a nice answer. So we get 37 equals C. All right, next it says find the area of the rectangle. So we want to get the whole rectangle. Well, we don't know what this is down here. If I knew what that was, I could find the length and the width, and I would be pretty happy. But since I don't know that, I'm going to have to figure it out. Now, the nice thing is we're told it's a rectangle, so we know it has to be a 90-degree angle here, which means we've got A, we've got B, and we've got C. So again, we can do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we get 93 squared plus X squared equals 155 squared. I'm going to subtract 93 squared from both sides to get x squared equals 155 squared minus 93 squared. And now I can square root both sides. And that's where I'm going to bring my calculator in. So I'm going to find the square root of 155 minus 93. I made it 124. All right, well, that's a nice answer too. So that's kind of nice. Double check. 124. All right, cool. So I know that that's 124. So that means I know that the whole length is going to be 124 plus 150 is 274. And area is going to be length times width, which is going to be 274 times 93. So we got the length across the bottom, and the width is going to be the height. So 274 times 93, 25482. All right, that's going to be our area, and that's going to be in units squared. We don't know what the units are. We weren't told, but it's in square units. So that's number 7. For number 8, we want to find not the trig ratio for A, all the trig ratios for A. So we want sine, cosine, and tangent. So sine of A, cosine of A, and tangent of A. So we're going to use SOHCAHTOA. Try and figure this one out. So we know we want to deal with angle A. So angle A is over here. Well, 197 is the hypotenuse. That's the biggest side. So there's no real question on that one. Across from angle A is the opposite. And then the last one's going to be the adjacent. So now I've got all of my numbers. So I can go ahead and make all of my fractions. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. That's 195 over 197. Cosine of A is adjacent over hypotenuse. That's 28 over 197. And then tangent of A is opposite over adjacent. That's 195 over 28. And those are the three fractions that I want. I don't really need to have anything else. I'm all set there. Question 9 tells us to find the perimeter of the triangle. So I know this is 20, but I have to find these two sides. I think the easiest way to do it is going to be to use the trig. So if I'm looking at angle 29, this is going to be the opposite side. 20 is the hypotenuse, and then the adjacent's way down there. So if I want to find out the opposite side with SOHCAHTOA, I need the opposite and the hypotenuse. Well, that's going to be sine. So I'm going to start with sine. So sine of 29 is equal to AC, so that's the opposite, over the hypotenuse, over 20. All right, well, I got to figure out what AC is. So I can put this over 1, and then I can cross multiply. So 20 times sine of 29 is equal to AC times 1. I don't know 20 times the sine of 29, so I got to figure that out. 20 sine of 29, and I got a negative number, which is really suspicious, but that's because I'm not in the right mode. There we go. 9.696. So we'll call that 9.7. For AC. Now we got to find BC. Well, down at the bottom, BC, I want adjacent and hypotenuse, so I'm going to use cosine. So it'll be BC over 20. But same deal. We're going to put this over 1, and we're going to cross multiply. So now we're going to do 20 times cosine of 29. $17.49, 17.5 seems reasonable for that. Now to get the final answer, we want the perimeter, which means we want to add up all the sides. So we want 9.7 plus 17.5 plus 20. All right, well, when we add these two up, we're going to get 26, 27.2 plus 20, which is 47.2. So that's our perimeter. Next, find the value of b in degrees. Since we're trying to find the degrees, we know we want to do an inverse trig function. Since b is right here, this is the hypotenuse, this is the opposite, this is the adjacent. Again, if we do SOHCAHTOA, we can see the opposite is 28.2, the adjacent is 45.8. Opposite and adjacent are used with tangent. So tangent of b is equal to opposite is 28.2, adjacent is 45.8. Since I want to find the angle, remember I got to use the inverse. I got to use the tangent minus 1. 28.2 over 45.8. So we're going to go ahead and throw that into the calculator. I'm just going to type it. I could go ahead and actually click the button if I wanted, but I don't feel like it. 28.2 over, I think we had 45.8. And so there we see we get our answer. We get 31.6. There we go. All right, moving on. So for question 11, what words describe the relationship between EG and DF? So we gotta be careful here because EG and DF are the diagonals. So it's not going to be the sides. We're looking for the relationship between the diagonals. Those diagonals definitely cross, so they're not parallel, so I'm not picking that one. So what we want to do is see what shape we have. Now if we measure it, we've got 4 and 1, 4 and 1, 4 and 1, 4 and 1. So all of these, since all the A's and the B's are the same, all of the C's would have to be the same. So I know that all of the sides are the same in this shape. And if I found the slope, this one's got a slope of up 1 over 4. This one's got a slope of up 4, back 1. Those are reciprocals and opposites. So I know that these things are going to be perpendicular to each other. So I found out that all the sides are the same. Again, I could do 4 squared plus 1 squared equals the side of each thing squared. And that's true for every single side, so I don't actually need to calculate that. And by counting, I was able to find out that the slopes of DG, up 1 over 4, and FG, down 4 over 1, are opposite reciprocals. Which means that these are going to all be 90-degree angles. I could check every single one of them. And so if a shape has all 90-degree angles and all the sides are the same, what we have here is a square. And so the goal is to remember, all right, well, what in a square is true about the diagonals? Well, diagonals are perpendicular. They meet at 90 degrees for a square. The diagonals are bisectors. They do cut each other in half. And they're also the same size. They're also congruent. So I could have done 3 marks on one set of those, but since I knew it was a square, I went ahead and made it congruent. So we want to pick those 3 options. For number 12, we have to decide if this is a right triangle and then explain why. There's a couple things that we could do. I think it's going to be easiest to just find this angle. That's the only one that looks like it might be a 90-degree angle. These are definitely not 90 degrees, so I'm just going to check if this is a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to check the slopes. So the slope here, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So M, we went down 1 over 5. For this slope, we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to go over 1. So 5 over 1. So yeah, I'm going to say yes. Since CB is perpendicular to AB. And that's all you need, because as long as they're perpendicular, that proves that you have a 90-degree angle. So you can say perpendicular is 90 degrees. Right triangle. And that's it. That's what we want to do. So that's all we could do. The other thing we could do is we could check to see if a squared plus b squared actually is c squared. But I think this one's a little bit easier to do with the slopes rather than actually calculating all of the sides. But you can do it either way. With 13, we have a circle that has this center and this radius. Write the equation of the circle. X minus 13 squared plus y plus 42 squared equals 5 squared. And again, that comes from the equation x minus h comma squared plus y minus k comma squared equals r squared, where this is h and that's k. So notice that 13 kept the minus sign. With the negative 42, we switched the sign to a plus. Second part down here, we have to ask, is this point on the circle? And we need to explain why. So what we're going to do is plug these in for x and y and see if we actually have a true statement. If this is true, then yeah, it's on the circle. If it's not, then it's not. So we're going to do 9 minus 13 squared plus negative 39 plus 42 squared equals 5 squared, but 5 squared is 25. So let's see what we got. 9 minus 13 is negative 4. Negative 39 plus 42 is 3. Negative 4 squared is 16. 3 squared is 9. But 16 plus 9 is 25. So 25 does equal 25, so we would say yes. And our reason would be that we satisfied the equation. The numbers work in the equation. The numbers satisfy the equation. You could say the equation is true. Satisfy. Equation is true when the point is plugged in. But that's the idea, is we want to plug in that point to see if it actually works out. For 14, write the equation of the graph circle. So this time we have to find everything. So to find the center, it looks like we're going to go right there. Right there to get a nice target to find the exact center of the circle. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So our center is at -4, -3. So again, we're going to use the same equation, not y equals x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. So x with minus 4 is going to be plus 4. So we got plus 4 there. Oops. That was okay. We'll mix those colors. With y, we've got a -3. So the minus sign is going to change that to a plus. Our squareds in there. And then we need to find the radius. We still don't have the radius yet, but we can count to get the radius. So in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4. The radius is 4. So we can say equals 4 squared. You can say 16 if you want to say equals 16. It doesn't matter in this case. For 15, it says find the length of arc PQ. So to do that, we need the arc length formula. So that's x over 360 is equal times 2 pi r. So that means we're going to do 99 over 360 times 2 pi, and then r is going to be the radius, which is just 1. So really we're going to get 99 times 2 times pi times 1 over 360, and we're going to type that in. So 99 over 360 is 2 pi times 1. We get 1.727, so 1.73 seems like that'll be good enough. There we go. Write a formula that can be used to find the area of the shaded region. So again, since we're finding the area of a shaded region, that's the area of a sector. So the sector formula is x degrees over 360 degrees times pi r squared. Now we gotta be careful because the shaded area is not the 45. The 45 is the unshaded area. So to get the shaded area's degrees, we have to do 360 minus 45. All right, so yeah, over here, so we got to do 360 minus 45. So when we do that, we get to 315. Now in this case, it just says to write a formula, so we're not going to need to calculate it once we get our formula. So we're just going to say that the sector is equal to, now this is tricky because x is going to be, for this x degrees, is the 315 over 360. And now the radius, they actually gave the radius the name x. So we have to say pi r squared, and that's it. So kind of a weird formula. That's not should not be an r, that should be an x in there, because x is in the question. So times pi x squared. And that's going to be the end of that one. So we don't get a number answer, we just get a formula, which is a little bit weird, but that's what we got for that one. All right, moving on. How many degrees is arc HJ? So what we want to do is we want to say, well, this is 72 degrees. So if we want to find out this arc is the same as the central angle. So that means that JK is 72 degrees. But since these are all radii, that's a radius, that's a radius, that's a radius, that means that these two arcs have to be the same. So this is also going to be 72 degrees. And that's it. That's all we got to do for that one. So that's kind of fancy. All right, moving on to 18. So we got to find the value of angle MNP. So we have the rule where if we've got an inscribed quadrilateral, whatever this is, I'll just call that x, has to add with what's opposite it to be 180 degrees. So 180 has to equal 73 plus x. So that means that 107 has to be x. So MNP is 107 degrees. What's the value of arc NP? So to find NP, what we want to do is find out what we're subtending. So in this case, That's a little bit tricky because to get to arc NP, we've got to find this big arc. So this big whole arc is going to be twice our angle measure. So 73 times 2 is going to be 146. Now, we've got this 84 over here. So to get the little angle that we've got left over, we've got to do 146 minus 84, and that's going to give us NP. That's going to give us this leftover section. So that's going to be 62. And that's our value for arc NP. So we get 62. So there we go. Next up, volume of a cone. So volume of a cone formula is 1/3 pi r squared h. So 1/3 pi, the radius is 3.4, the height is 4.8. We have to square the radius, and that's just a calculator question. So we're going to throw this into the calculator. It doesn't specify to include pi or not include pi, so it's your choice if you want. 1/3 pi, 3.4 squared. 3.4 squared is not exactly the nicest of numbers, so the pi doesn't really add much to it. 4.8. But you got your choice. You can either answer this way with the 58.106, or if we get rid of the pi, we get 18.496. Now, whether or not you think one is better than the other, I'll leave that up to you. But I'll grab both of them, and then you can choose which one you want. Both of them are correct answers if we put a pi after the 18 number. So again, I can choose either one of these. If I decide I want to write a pi after the 18.496, which I can just write one in. Oops. Write a little pi after that. So either one of those answers would be okay for the volume of a cone. For 20, this looks a lot like an addition rule question, and it is. So 14% of the students are in drama, 52% are in the regiment, 7% are in both. What's the probability that a student is in the drama club or regiment? So our addition rule is PA or B is equal to PA plus PB minus PA and B. So if we take A to be that they're in the drama club, we've got 14% for A. If we take B to be the regiment, then you got 52. And then both would be A and B, so minus 7. 14 minus 7 is just 7. 7 plus 52 is 59. So we get 59%. All right, for 21, we have the two-way table here. So we're going to fill in the whole two-way table. So to get to the totals, we just want to add 32 plus 12. So that's 44. I want to add to the bottom, so 44 plus 47 is 91. Now, if I want to go backwards, I need to subtract. So 91 minus 55 is going to give me what I need over here. So 90 minus 55 is 35, 36. And again, if I want to subtract to get to the orange for the straw, that's going to be 36 minus 32, which is 4. And then I've got my choice of subtractions. I think 47 minus 4 is going to be a little bit nicer to give me 43. And I can double check. 12 plus 43 is 55. So I've checked it out. I know I've got the answer right. Pretty good. So the last part down here says find the probability that somebody picked apple given that they already picked a straw. So what we're going to do is only look at the straws because we have to pick a straw. And then we have to look at how many people picked apple. 32 people picked apple. So 32 out of the 36 straw people. And we don't need to reduce. You can if you want, but that's it. All right, final question, right? Yeah, final question. Find the distance between the 2 points, points A and B. So here, since we're given the distances, we probably want to use the 3D Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared plus Z squared equals C squared, where C is going to be the whole distance from A to B. So just plugging everything in, we'll say that's A, we'll say that's B, we'll say that that's Z. So 10 squared plus 4 squared plus 6 squared equals C squared. 100 plus 14 plus 16 plus 36 equals C squared. To get C by itself, we'll square root both sides. So we get the square root of 136, 46, 152 equals C. But then we should see, all right, well, can we actually do anything with this 152? And we can. We actually can reduce this 152. We can divide it by 4. We're going to get 38. And then 38 is just 19 times 2. So I can't really do anything with 38. So my final answer is going to be 2 root 38 equals C. Because we can reduce it, we may as well. And that's everything that's on the review guide for this one.